Welcome to The Chemical Show, the podcast where chemical means business. I'm your host, Victoria Meyer, bringing you stories and insights from leaders driving innovation and growth across the chemical industry. Each week, we explore key trends, real-world challenges, and the strategies that make an impact. Let's get started. Welcome back to The Chemical Show, where leaders talk business. We're at the midpoint of 2025, which has had more ups and downs than most people would hope. And of course, you guys know these ups and downs. Are we having tariffs? Are there no tariffs? There is conflict between Russia and Ukraine. There's conflict in the Middle East. There's potential trade wars. There's just a lot of challenges. Oh, and add on top of that, oversupply in a lot of markets, maybe some supply or demand decline in other markets. And it leads to a year of uncertainty, I'll say. Although as I talk with leaders across the industry, some people are like, we're having a really good year. Others are like, well, we're not having such a good year. Or my business is doing great. We are approaching earnings season. In the next couple of weeks, publicly held companies at least are going to be announcing their second quarter earnings. And so we'll get a better flavor for how business is really occurring. So stay tuned on that. But I think one of the challenges that companies have in these periods of economic uncertainty is how to balance growth and innovation and things that maybe don't have a sure return on investment with simply tightening down the hatches, focusing on business as usual, being a little bit in a wait and see mode. And so, what I see across the industry when I talk to leaders is a bit of a mix on that. If you're sitting still on changing your business model, you're going to regret it. And so, I've talked with a number of leaders recently, and I'm going to bring in some highlights from some recent episodes just to talk today about how do we foster an innovation mindset and practice inside of your companies. And right, a lot of companies across the chemical industry are really old, 75, 100 years old. In fact, I spoke with several recently, Michael Levenfeld from Hexion, Leon de Bruin from Lummus Technology, Christian McGriver from Pilot Chemical. All of these are long, well-established companies. At the same time, I've talked recently with a number of innovators that are newer companies, whether it be Integrity Biochem, Lanzatech and Jennifer Holmgren. And then I've got a couple of newbies coming up in upcoming weeks. Allied Microbiota is one of them that I'm talking with and that you'll be hearing about very soon. So today is really a bit about how do we bring together some of those insights and best practices from these companies that are continuing to innovate, because they know that innovation is their future. And how do we foster that innovation mindset? So here we go. So first of all, let's just talk about what is innovation. And I think we sometimes think of innovation as being very disruptive, and it absolutely is. It is the big, bad new idea that changes your company, your customers, the industry. And yet it's also the incremental improvements that day by day, step by step, make business better. At the end of a year, at the end of 2 years, where you started at and where you end is different because you've made incremental improvements, innovations, and transformations. And so I think, when we talk about this, it's not just about technology, whether it be process technology or IT and computer technology. It's our business processes. It's the way that we engage customers. It's the way that we manufacture. And I think, when I talked with Leon de Bruin recently from Lummus Technology, he really emphasized this very point. And Lummus, as you guys have heard, if you've listened to Leon's podcast interview recently, they've introduced like 50 new technologies in the last 5 years, bringing their technology portfolio to something like 160 or 170 technologies. So that's a 50% increase versus where they were at the start of the decade, right? And that's really important, those big innovations. And yet, the incremental improvements, the process improvements, the product improvements are equally as important. And so I think, first of all, we need to recognize that innovation is happening everywhere. And it's big and it's small. And sometimes the most game-changing improvements happen incrementally, bit by bit, till we get to where we want to go. So that's one piece, just to frame this. But how do you become successful in creating an innovative company, an innovation mindset inside of your company. And one of the things I think is so critical is overcoming the we've always done it this way mentality. And by the way, in my mind, as I was prepping for this and as I'm speaking it, that song, This Is How We Do It by Montel Jordan is going through my mind. So maybe I'll find a way to link to it in the show notes so that you guys can listen to it as well. But just because this is how we've always done it doesn't make it the right answer for today, where we sit in 2025, where we're heading in 2030 and beyond. And so it's a dilemma because across the chemical industry, operational excellence is so critical. Manufacturing consistency, product consistency, process consistency. And we've really fed into this as our businesses. And that's really what's driven success. And yet, if we always do it the same way, we are likely to get outpaced by the competition. And so, one of my favorite books, it was written a long time ago, probably about 25 years ago. It's called The Innovator's Dilemma by Clayton Christensen. And he talks about this very thing. And he gives some examples of companies. And if you think about, something that one of the examples in the book is around like steamships, right? And so if you think about the shipping industry, at one point it was sails, right? And these beautiful sailing ships with multiple sails. And then they were replaced by steam engines. But the people that were making the sails thought, oh, this is the most effective way. It's the most innovative. Why would anybody ever do anything? I'm not worried about it. And yet along comes the steam engine, and then along comes nuclear and other stuff. And by the way, I have now outpaced my knowledge of shipping. So you get the point though. So the innovator's dilemma is being excellent is not enough. You kind of have to reinvent yourself, and that's part of it. And you've got to innovate and you've got to reinvent yourself because your competitors, old and new, certainly are. So some of those barriers are really around this idea that, well, this is what works. I know this is what works and this is efficient and I'm going to do that. But you have to overcome that and change some assumptions. So, when I talk with Jennifer Holmgren from Lanzatech, now Lanzatech, of course, is a young, innovative company. They're 20 years old, they're a 20-year-old startup. And Jennifer talked about this home run obsession. So, like, we're waiting for the big breakthrough, and it's a bit of a trap, and that you have to come up with incremental progress and not get distracted by unrealistic expectations. So that's something to consider as you move beyond the this is how we do it mindset. The other piece, and when I talked with Christian McIver at Pilot, she talked about this, right? Their technology is decades old. And she talked actually about using their sulfonation technology and updating it for bio-based surfactants and for regulatory shifts, which basically was, okay, we can't keep doing what we're doing with the existing assets because people don't want that stuff. We have to evolve and get ready and move on to the new things. So I think this whole aspect of embracing it's not always about how we've done it, and that operational excellence is critical and vital, but we have to leave room for changes. So that's one piece of this. The second point I've got here is around creating psychological safety, right? And it's a big word, but basically making it okay to innovate, to make mistakes, to learn and to grow. So it's a classic leadership challenge because again, back to the whole, we value operational excellence. Every company values operational excellence, right? You're doing something, you're creating something, you're producing something, you're doing it over and over and over again in a repeatable way. And yet making it okay to make mistakes, to be vulnerable about what you do and what you don't know, to ask questions about, well, what is that new technology and that new approach, and recognizing smart failures. So, Michael Levenfeld from Hexion talked about this, he talks about asking dumb questions, right? And that he models the asking the quote unquote dumb question, right? Because people assume, and you've been there, I've been there, you've been there, you're in a room and you're like, what the holy heck are they talking about? And somebody And you assume, and you look around and you assume everybody knows, or you look around and, we're talking innovation, you assume everybody knows that this is how we do it, right? Back to this is what we do. And I don't want to do something different because I don't want to make mistakes. So creating that space to be wrong, for your team to try out new things, whether it's a new business process, a new technology, and figuring that out. Now, I like to talk about this also the within the sandbox, right? So if you've done any IT projects, and people talk a lot about, we're working on it in the sandbox. I put together a sandbox for us to test this out in. I think that's so critical, right? Creating boundaries so that whatever it is that you're doing is not affecting the entirety of your enterprise, but you create a space to test, study, inform, and then decide how to take it out more broadly. And so that's part of this whole creating space for innovation inside your business and inside your company. The fourth thing is this whole aspect of getting away from not invented here syndrome, right? And I think companies are doing this much better. And in fact, the biggest companies who are often the ones that have this not invented here syndrome are recognizing that they need to partner with innovators, partner with other people across the industry. So creating and engaging diverse teams internally and externally, whether it's with business partners, customers, suppliers, third parties. Now, of course, you have to be mindful of intellectual property, and you guys know how to do this, and your lawyers know how to do this, and we all know how to do this. But this aspect of let's building really diverse cross-functional teams and actively pursuing external partnerships, it's a must. If your company is like most companies I know, there have been dramatic cuts for the past decade, 2 decades in R&D spend, in innovation spend, because it's this idea of, well, what's the payback? Well, so therefore the payback comes when you give space for a small innovator to identify something and then bring it inside. Bring it inside your company to create that partnership, to take that innovation, test it out in a bigger space and more. And again, companies are doing this a lot. When you look across the biosurfactant space, I see that all the time, right? Cecil partnering with people, Dow's partnering with people, IBC, which is still in the innovative space, they're partnering with companies smaller and bigger. And so this whole aspect of getting diversity of points of view in terms of who's on your team and who's helping figure out this innovation, this whole aspect of going external and finding innovations externally that you can bring into your internal business. So that's my third point. My fourth point around this is, the companies that are doing this really well in terms of driving innovation inside their mature companies are creating incentives and rewards and structures that drive innovation. So, I've got my note here says, let's talk about rewarding the process and not just the result, right? So I tried something, I learned something, we should reward it. And we create this reward system along the way. Now, I am going to tell you, it goes completely against this adage of progress, not process, right? Because ultimately, we're all trying to achieve an outcome. So you have to find the right balance to reward risk taking and innovation versus operational excellence, and reward the process, the learnings along the way, the fact that, hey, this is maybe it's a 12-month innovation process or cycle, or maybe it's a 3-year innovation cycle, but we got to a milestone. We've learned something. We've tried something new. We've done it, and it's been successful. The other piece to me that goes along this with this is being really clear about having data-driven risks and taking data-driven risks. So not just innovating for the sake of innovating, which some of that happens, and it's absolutely true, but understanding that along the way, you've got to gather data. You have to understand why something is working and then understand what those risks are. This manifests in a couple of different ways. When I talked with Charlie Landis of IBC, Integrity Biochem, he talked about empowering their scientists to daydream a little bit, right? Exploring the left field ideas, being open to fast failures. Now, again, not unbounded. There's boundaries because you have to bring something to the table, but creating that space and then incentive for innovation. So those are the four biggies. And then what can you actually do? So this is like, okay, Victoria, that's all really awesome. How do I actually get there? First of all, just try, right? So I think this whole idea of agile and agile processes and agile innovation, which is really a lot of what the tech community is built on, ideate, test, learn, do, repeat, fix, keep going and doing that. That is so critical. The second piece is really harnessing your customer and business partners' feedback. They want different things than you're offering today, right? They know it. Your sales team knows it. Your tech support team knows it. People know it. We get kind of stuck when they say, well, I'd really like an apple. Well, that's fine, but we only sell pears. Okay, fine. But is that really what they need? So getting versed with asking better questions, understanding the why behind what your customers want and getting that feedback. And when you understand the why of what they're looking for, you can innovate more effectively. Side note, one of my favorite speeches I give to sales and commercial team is about finding your customers' why to help you win. So if that's something that you guys are interested in bringing that perspective of, okay, why does the why matter? Let's talk. Would love to come in and support you with that. So that's my little side note. But back to the whole harnessing customer feedback, understanding their why, bringing those cross-functional teams together, sales, manufacturing, supply chain, to address that customer feedback and thinking outside the box. And then some of this is also what becomes so critical in innovation is communication. So I was talking to a leader just this week who expressed how frustrated their sales and business team is because there's an innovation this company was implementing regarding a new product. So new product coming to market, super excited. They've been working on this. They've gone out, they've gotten their customers excited. They're starting to get orders. They apparently had some, they must have had some test product along the way, et cetera. And then they had a meeting where manufacturing said, oh, well, we actually can't produce that. What? Like, where have you been? So this whole aspect of communicating to all the steps of your value chain, being really transparent about your goals, your timing, your capabilities, not trying to necessarily force the capabilities. I mean, again, there's this whole aspect of you have to create the nudge and the tension to make change happen sometimes. And this is where things, again, that take place a lot in other industries, particularly in the tech industry, sprints, hackathons, creating these test systems to capture ideas and implement it. It sounds complex. Some of this can be done in a spreadsheet, right? A spreadsheet and 5 people in a room. Like, well, what's the next big thing that we're going to do with our sales process? What's the next big thing or the next little thing that we're going to do in our supply chain? So getting creative, getting innovative. And at the end of the day, we talk a lot. And I think the whole aspect of where we are today in the world with AI. AI is amazing. And I use AI tools for a number of different things in my business and in the podcast and in creation. But AI can't replace the power of humans together for innovation, for ideation, for thinking really outside the box. And ultimately, when you want your company, which is, most of the companies across the chemical industry are mature companies, mature products, mature businesses, yet still need to innovate to stay successful, to grow, to be profitable, and to be here for another 10, 20, 50 years. Innovation is really critical. So harnessing the power of your people inside your company, outside your company is really critical. So anyway, go out and innovate today. Go do something new. Think about, what the next step is. And I would love to hear, give me some feedback. Send me a message on LinkedIn, shoot me an email. What innovations are you working on, big and small, that you wouldn't have thought about even and considered, a year ago? I would love to hear from you. So anyway, that's it for today. Thanks for joining me today on The Chemical Show. Keep listening, keep following, keep sharing, and we will talk with you again soon. Thanks for joining us today on The Chemical Show. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and most importantly, share it with your friends and colleagues. For more insights, visit thechemicalshow.com and connect with us on LinkedIn. You can find me at Victoria King Meyer on LinkedIn, and you can also find us at the Chemical Show podcast. Join us next time for more conversations and strategies shaping the future of the industry. We'll see you soon.